Good Monday evening. Thank you for tuning in, America. Pastor Toby, Chalk Knox.
Where's my water?
It's all
and I'm
three
the water
of us
boy.
again.
We're all here.
Yeah.
Where's my...
School started today for my kids. I dropped them off. Yep.
School started.
We got a jam-packed week, and don't worry, Baptist buddies, we're going to get there.
Now, when you say Baptist, which Baptist are you saying?
I'm just saying all my Baptist buddies. Okay.
So, really?
We got
Maybe you understand the
John
difference.
Tiggs coming on the show, and his Loudoun County. All the people that were kind of caught up in the Loudoun County debacle. It's really interesting story coming up. That's tomorrow.
Okay.
On Wednesday, Beer and Psalms.
Yeah.
Thursday, we have...
Wait. Aren't we trying to get Joe Rigney on?
I can't. He hadn't confirmed me yet.
No, I'm saying we're trying.
We're trying to get Joe Rigney on for Wednesday.
But tell why we're trying to get Joe Rigney on.
Because he wrote an article on why we were right.
No, he wrote...
No. He wrote an article on why how his Baptist church can accept a paedo-Baptist baptism at his church, because he's a Credo Baptist church.
Right. Yeah. So just continue that conversation.
So kind of interesting conversation.
Unity between Presbyterians and Baptists.
And then we're going to have James White come on later, either Thursday or Friday. We haven't nailed that down. James is traveling right now, but he's going to come on so we can kind of fight this out. And then on Thursday, we also have another show happening on Thursday. We're going to have some local politicians running for county commissioner on Thursday. And then on Friday, we got Larson Hicks coming in, talk about family, business, economy. And
this is a jam-packed week.
It's a jam-packed week.
I'm excited.
There you go.
I'm excited. Hey, using a smartphone or computer opens the door to a host of digital temptations. In a world saturated with pornography and other harmful content, what's a Christian to do? We need to take a proactive approach, welcoming transparency in our digital media choices and accountable to you. That's accountable, the number 2, and then the word you makes that easy. Their accountability software shares detailed activity reports from all your devices and your kids' devices in real time to the accountability partners that you choose. With accountability in place, your family can effectively guard against temptations online and live with purity and integrity. Learn more and try it free at accountable, the number 2, the word you, YOU.com/FLF.
And they're going to be boothing at a conference. So
hey, awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. Knoxville.
Link to neurodegenerative disease, myocarditis, Bell's palsy, liver disease, impaired adaptive immunity, impaired DNA damage response, etc. So it's possible, in fact, it's looking likely that the vaccine might suppress the immune system. This fact, the authors concluded, will, quote, have a wide range of consequences, not the least of which include the reactivation of latent viral infections and the reduced ability to effectively combat future infections, end quote. Now, again, we sincerely hope that's not true. But it's not just the conclusion of one scientific journal. The Lancet, maybe the most famous scientific journal in the world, released similar findings in February. The Lancet's piece was entitled, quote, risk of infection, hospitalization, and death up to 9 months after a second dose of COVID-19 vaccine. A physician called Kenji Yamamoto made this observation about the data from the Lancet. He wrote this in a letter to the Journal of Virology, and we're quoting, the study showed that immune function among vaccinated individuals 8 months after the administration of 2 doses of COVID-19 vaccine was lower than that among the unvaccinated individuals. Wow. Now, your first response, if you're a humane person, to a line like that has got to be deep sympathy. Mm-hmm. Because people were misled. They were forced. Medical ethics thrown out the window. People were forced to take medicine they didn't want. And some of them may have been hurt by it. And you don't have to take this man's word for it. Pull up the Lancet study yourself. You won't find anything of the text of the article saying what Kenji Yamamoto said, which is weird. Why would the Lancet want to hide a major finding like that? We can't say. But if you look at table 3 in the piece, here's what you'll find buried in the data. Among people around the age of 80 who have been double vaccinated, that would include people like Joe Biden, the per capita rate of medical incidences, including hospitalizations or death, is nearly twice as high as the rate of serious incidents for the unvaccinated. This is 180 days after vaccination. What is that? And why is no one interested?
You know, this is insane. All I can think about is all the TV shows, all the popular media that was out there doing, go get vax, save a life, da-da-da. And all of a sudden, all that singing and stuff don't seem...
so joyful no more.
This seems kind of creepy.
Yeah.
With us right now on the show. Dr. Jordan Vaughn is owner and CEO of MedB Help Clinics. MedHelp Clinics now has 6 locations, sees over 170,000 patients a year, employs 18 physicians, over 200 healthcare workers. Wow. Jordan Vaughn received his BS in chemical engineering from the University of Alabama, his medical degree from UAB School of Medicine, and completed his residency in internal medicine at UAB Hospital.
Hook 'em horns.
Since the appearance of SARS-CoV-2, as owner and CEO, Jordan has pushed his organization to be on the leading edge of properly delivering early outpatient treatment for his patients and in the Birmingham community for COVID-19. Dr. Vaughn, thanks for joining us again on Cross Politic.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I enjoy being with y'all.
Well, so you caught this Tucker clip. You are familiar with the literature and some of the studies that he's even citing there. In your medical opinion, is the vaccine showing signs that it suppresses the human immune system?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question about that. Obviously, every time you poke the bear of the immune system, there might be a benefit, but there's likely also going to be consequences. That's why historically, when we look at something like injecting healthy people with a therapeutic like this thing is, that we usually want years of analysis to find out what is the consequence. And many times, especially with this technology, mRNA technology, that's been useful in treating people with cancer. By the way, those people have cancer.
Right. Yeah.
They are not otherwise healthy people. So again, it's very different. So when you're talking about a therapeutic that turns into a vaccine is injecting otherwise healthy people. And you better make pretty darn good sure that it's not going to have secondary consequences. Because one thing we've learned in the last 20 years, just even in how we treat things like cancer. I mean, even, in the 90s, we treated it with surgical resection, we treated it with chemotherapy, we treated it with radiation. Now, primarily cancer therapy, and it's really been revolutionizing cancer therapy, we treat it with immunotherapy. So we use the immune system to treat cancer. Well, interesting to think about that us messing with the immune system might cause cancer to reappear.
Wow. So
wait, did the definition of vaccine change in all this from in 2020? Right? To be able to
not only that, I think the CDC FOIA request shows that they actually spent a good time trying to figure out how to change the website and all their information to be in line with the product. You can actually look at about 60 pages of emails between the CDC employees. But what they were doing is they were getting a lot of kickback on saying, well, this doesn't meet the definition of what y'all defined a vaccine for. And instead, obviously, and again, if you're emailing on a government computer system, you ought to realize that somebody's going to ask for those emails at some point. Right. But I'm not really sure, they know that all the time. But
so help me real quick. I think I'm hearing you make a distinction then between a traditional vaccine and what you're calling a therapeutic. Can you help us understand what's the difference between those two things?
So historically, I mean, again, and I think the paper that Tucker's commenting on, that is the difference. I mean, historically, we use inactivated viruses. So we would take a virus and we would take the part off of it that is most pathogenic. We would put it in some medium, whether, for a while that was egg-based medium or some type of that would replicate that inactivated virus. And then we would put a fixed amount into somebody's deltoid, into their arm, and you would be passively interfacing with that antigen and making an antibody response that works against additional infection. There are other vaccines that are what we call subunit or subparticle vaccines. So they just take a part of the virus and hope that that thing is giving them a pretty good immune response. mRNA is not even really in the class of that. It actually kind of gives vaccines a bad name, which, by the way, you've seen in probably the uptake of, you see the pediatricians going, you know what, this thing was so bad that no one even trusts any vaccine anymore. It's like the redheaded stepchild that, it's like you're bad company kind of thing. And I think, and they kind of knew this going in, that if they're going to use the name of Pfizer, which Pfizer's historically has had a great name, they've always had a really revolutionizing drugs, not what we call Me Too drugs. Me Too drugs are drugs that, we already have that, where they just come along and say, hey, this one doesn't have as many side effects.
Right.
They used Pfizer's name, probably inappropriately, to get people to think, hey, this is working. And they used a technology that really isn't, historically is not a vaccine. First of all, usually to even get approved for a vaccine, it should last at least a year and have an efficacy of over 50% of prevention of infection. Well, they had 2 months of data or 3 months of data, and it was 95%. Again, that data was probably, regardless what went on, I think there was some interesting outcomes there in terms of what they called an infection. Even Deborah Birx recently almost like is like, of course we knew it didn't do this, and of course we didn't test those people in the trial. And I was just kind of like, so you're admitting to fraud here? Like this is what she wrote, like a 600-page tome on her ability to get around Atlas and those guys and tell them what to do. So regardless, vaccines historically, they prompt the immune system. There's always side effects to vaccines, okay? No question, okay? They are very low historically, but that doesn't mean that the people that have them or get the consequences, whether they're Guillain-Barré or an autoimmune attack, they're serious. But compared to that, this is a vaccine, and a vaccine with quotation marks over it, unlike any other. And it's because it isn't like any other.
So why didn't we use a traditional COVID vaccine for COVID? Why didn't we do the traditional route?
People were dying, Gabe.
So it baffles me how they say, well, we couldn't do that because we wouldn't know what to do. The reality is we have done, actually the technology that's used in this vaccine from the Vaccine Research Foundation, which is part of the NIH. The actual spike protein stabilization technology, which we just licensed to the rest of the world about 3 months ago, was patented in 2016. So when they say this was new, we did it really quick, they're just lying to you. They've been messing with the spike protein since 2003, and they had been trying to. So, and then when MERS came along, which was Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome or virus, they again messed with the spike protein, and they found a way to stabilize it in a conformation pattern that allowed it to be harder for the body to break down. And so that's really where you got your immune response. And the mRNA technology, as Robert Malone talks about, mRNA itself usually gets eaten up by the innate immune system, which is what I would call your alarm system in your body, which is kind of the first kind of response. But if you wrap it in what we would call fatty cation positive, and now they've renamed it to liponanoparticles, it kind of allows the body to really transfect it into the cell, and then it kind of tricks it into reading it. It's almost like, entering some code into a computer that it's not supposed to read.
So Doc, help me, because I have so many questions, because this is something that I was concerned about at the beginning of this. I said, if they can tell you to put on a mask, we started doing daily shows to try and communicate to everybody. If they can tell you put on a mask, they'll tell you get a vaccine, and they don't have to go through the testing of, they can do whatever they want to do if they can get you to do one thing, right? Take your rights away here and force you to do everything. Let me just start here. What is inside of the vaccine that is making what is the fallout of it? What is falling out of the vaccine? What is going to be? Let's say that I got the vaccine and I'm getting my second dose. What are some of the things, the adverse effects that you guys are concerned about that you're seeing and say, hey, you can expect to see this, that, and the other thing?
Well, the first thing would be, when we're talking about classic vaccinology, the word inactivate, and the word inactivating a viral vaccine would mean you would take the part off of it that causes the damage. So the first thing I usually tell people is, well, what makes COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 unique? What causes it to be so, causes significant morbidity and mortality? Meaning, what does it cause people to go to the hospital for, unlike any other virus? Okay. And the answer to that is, and most honest physicians will tell you this, it's the spike protein. Okay. So, but what do you think the vaccine makes you make?
Spike protein.
Exactly. So that should have been your first clue, that the very thing that makes the virus pathogenic is they are giving you the instructions to. And unfortunately, what we've learned, and treating a lot of people that have vaccine injury from people that have had serious COVID, especially what we would call persistent COVID or long COVID, it is the spike protein pathology. And actually, I'm speaking in October at we're having the first FLCCC summit in Orlando, and speaking about kind of what we would call microclotting pathology. The spike protein itself, if you were to drop it in plasma or platelet poor plasma, which is what I could do if I got your blood, David, and like spun it down and use your plasma, the spike protein itself would cause fibrin to cross-link, and then it would cross-link in a way that would make it very hard for your body to break down. Fibrin's another word for clots. Okay. And so,
wow.
Not surprised here that one of the biggest side effects of this vaccine is clotting pathology, correct?
Yeah, right.
Well, it happens to be that the thing they're teaching you to make by itself is, fancy word is thrombogenic, but it makes you make clots, and it makes it clots in such an abnormal way that they're very difficult for the body to break down.
Wow.
And that's what causes significant destruction.
So why is it happening at the second dose? Because that's one of the things that the article was talking about, that this is happening, mainly after the second dose. They're seeing a lower immune system.
So the priming of it is, again, you need 2 doses. So the first dose, your body is still, God designed it to be very effective at even getting rid of the junk that Tony Fauci decides to put in it. But if you, kind of hit it twice, or hit it 3 times, or in Biden's case, hit it 4 times, your body goes, well, I guess it looked bad to me, but I guess we're going to go with this now, kind of like,
wow.
And so in that sense, what you're doing is, the problem is what we call antibody dependent enhancement. And it's a good example. Like I had an 80-year-old patient today that had COVID. She was unvaccinated, which is fantastic, which I don't even know why we classify them, but she had cleared COVID in 5 days. Even the New England Journal of Medicine, this came out in June of 2022 in the New England Journal. Unvaccinated, it takes about 5 days to clear it for where they can culture it. Vaccinated takes about 10. Boosted takes 15 plus days.
Wow.
And here's the answer. It's pretty obvious that Biden was double boosted. For a while I was saying, well, he can't have taken this. Maybe he's probably just lying. Well, no, when he stays positive for 18 days, it's pretty obvious that he's taken the jab. So we're taking the jab and boosted. So.
Wow. So
why haven't they stopped? Right? Like, why haven't they stopped?
Well, not only have they not stopped, guess what they're coming out for the fall?
Another boost.
Shut up.
Another booster.
No, but it's a booster with another different spike protein.
Oh, no.
They're giving you 2?
So they're giving you a bivalent spike protein. So you're not only going to get the original Wuhan spike, now you're going to get the Omicron spike, which also begs the question, why do you have to include the original? We have to include the original because it's what we call original antigenic scent, meaning that your body is marked with this. It can't get rid of the fact that it has already been vaccinated against the original strand. So if you don't include that, it'll confuse. You have to basically include that original strand in the bivalent strand.
So what do we just? I'm sorry, Doc. I don't want to interrupt. Anything you're saying, finish it, please.
No, go for it.
Okay.
Good. I'm good.
What do we just do to the human body?
So, Peter McCullough in this article gives a pretty good example of it, but we did things that, first of all, in somebody who's 70 or 80 years old, I would say that these vaccines were an interesting attempt to decrease mortality. Okay. And so, but that's about where it ended. Once you started going down the age ladder, all the way down to now 6 months to 5 years old, they didn't need it. And there was no consequence. It's one thing to give an experimental 30 to an 80-year-old and find out 10 years later that it caused cancer. Well, they're probably not alive because they're 80. Yeah. Okay. But to give it to young people or people that have more than 10 years on the horizon is just nuts. So it's again, it is a complete collapse of what I would call medical ethics, but also kind of our regulatory environment. And I'm not a fan of regulation, but when it comes to giving a healthy individual a new therapeutic, you better be pretty sure first of all, you ought to inform them about the potential lack of knowledge or knowledge about bad things, but you ought to also have them consent to the fact that they're signing up for an experiment.
Did the CDC changed guidelines like in the last couple of weeks regarding, I think, vaccinated and unvaccinated people? What is that an indication of any kind of change of mode of operations?
Well, as I told you, the New England Journal's paper in June 28th that showed that the boosted were the most likely to persist in carrying the virus. Of course, the results of that paper at the bottom said boosted people can spread the virus too, which is a little bit understatement. I would say, well, they can share it 3 times longer was the actual outcome of the data. But in a Pfizer advertised world, the result was that boosted are just as likely to spread it as the unvaccinated. So what it really proves is that this, from the beginning, was known that this thing as a narrow therapeutic with a highly mutable RNA vaccine or RNA virus, that these things weren't going to work to begin with, meaning they were not their goal. And Birx, as well as Fauci, act like they knew this from the beginning, which they're either lying now or they were lying then. But we knew that it wouldn't prevent infection nor stop transmission. Yet we acted like it. So again, that's the falsity.
What? Why do you think this is going on? Why do you think there's been such a massive collapse in medical ethics?
Fear. Fear. And then the other thing is most physicians really aren't their own boss. Most of them are not critical thinkers. Most of them are doers or proceduralists.
Yeah.
They're just, and they're not bad at it, but they don't have time to sit around and read a lot about this. So they kind of outsource their own, what I would call common sense to the CDC. The problem is the CDC and the FDA are corrupted. We know that more than ever. So heck, the CDC just had an Inspector General report that was kind of, Robert Malone was talking about it. I didn't really realize how those agencies were run, but there's something called the Senior Executive Services, the SES, which is like above the GSA in the government. And they're kind of the chief of staff of a lot of these organizations. And they're kind of like the shadow, and so when public polling for your organization goes under a certain thing, the SES gets together, and it's the same people that probably took out Trump, because he wanted to fire a lot of these people, but they're career government bureaucrats that are kind of in their own like unfireable position. That's why he's been talking about trying to use Schedule F to get rid of these people. But that goes back to the fact that we know our president isn't really there, but even if he was there, he's not necessarily he's only in power as much as the SES lets him do the things that he wants to do.
So Doc, you got a moment to hang around for like 10 more minutes, and I got one more question for you, then we'll go backstage. But the last question I want to ask you is, if someone has gotten the vaccine, is their immune system can they handle a cold? Will they be able to handle a cold, or will a cold something take them out?
Is this like a new AIDS?
Yeah, exactly.
So we don't really know that. I will say that everyone's different. God made us all different. And so for some people, the vaccine was just a momentary issue that had no long-term effects. But anytime you poke the bear, which meaning the immune system itself, there's going to be certain people that have significant issues. So again, I think that's why it's kind of what I would call a soft, I'm starting to become a little bit apocalyptic here, but like soft genocide, meaning it's causing significant morbidity and mortality in older people and cancer occurrences and those kind of things. If anything, it probably makes it more likely that you have it. But I've always been kind of one of these people that, the whole, president's going, hey, we're going to cure cancer. The problem is cancer is a genetic issue for many ways. It is, unfortunately, I would call our original sin is in our genetics. But, and so messing with your immune system in any particular way, whether that's, being in the sun, taking these injections or a lot of different things, really kind of not necessarily unleash sounds too severe, but it can compromise your what we call tumor suppressor genes, meaning the things that the things that are trying to keep your body's innate issue that might come to fruition over years of time. Meaning God designed us not to live forever. I would say God designed us to live forever, but for some reason our genetics decide that these cells stop dividing.
Well, back to the original.
I'm getting a little epistemological here.
I like it when my doctor gets epistemological.
Me too.
We need more doctors.
Dr. Vaughn, where can people follow you? You have been amazing in this whole process. Listening to you and following you has been very helpful to me. You speak in a way that I can understand. If people want to follow you and listen to you and catch your updates, where can they do that at?
So concerneddoctors.org is our organization here in Alabama. And actually, Peter McCullough, the author of this article, is also, he's not necessarily part of our organization, but has helped us. And then, in all honesty, I have a podcast with Peter. Peter actually has it on Wednesday, and I have it on Tuesday with Dr. Tankersley. And even though we're not as informative or smart as Peter, we try to make it down to earth. I don't know if you ever had Peter McCullough interviewed, but sometimes he can get pretty high up. You need to have a medical degree to know what he's talking about. So,
what's the name of your podcast?
It's basically America Out Loud Pulse, and so it's if you go on America Out Loud, which Malcolm Out Loud. I don't know if y'all know who Malcolm is, but he with Peter's kind of success as well as the desire for a lot of people to learn about medicine, he's got a show every 5 days a week, different doctors, and we're Tuesday.
Okay.
Listen on Tuesdays.
I'm going to ask him. We're going to keep him on.
We're keeping him on. Because we got to talk about reproduction stuff.
I want to talk about that. I want to talk about fertility, and I want to talk about Dr. Fauci's resignation.
Yeah, we'll talk about all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know why I just hit the church organ. It's just like I just got said.
We got a pastor doctor.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, yeah, all my Gabe, you must have been over here playing.
I ain't touched nothing.
Yeah, you did. All right.
The only thing I learned how to figure out was the vocal changes.
You had me sounding like I was a chipmunk while you were gone.
We're going backstage. If you're single, get married. If you're married, have you some kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. It's going to be an interesting week. This is Cross Politic.
Home. It's where you build your legacy, where traditions are started, seeds are planted, meals are shared, and stories are told.
We are Chris and Natalie Carpenter, owners of Story Real Estate, and our team of top agents helps people find homes in Moscow, Idaho, and around the country.
Have you thought about a move? Contact us to get connected with a top agent who shares your values and puts your family first. Or reach out to us about our Moscow relocation guide.
Wherever you're looking to go, we can help you find home. Call us at Story Real Estate or visit us at storyrealestate.com and start building your legacy.
The season of Augustine and the season of Cassiodorus were very different moments in a crucial transformation that occurred in the history of the Western liberal arts. All right, so just stay like this. How am I doing here? So, yeah, you don't like this, huh? What does a Christian education look like when non-Christians are the ones who control the institutions of learning? This is a question that confronted Bishop Augustine of Hippo in North Africa in the 5th century AD. Augustine lived at the twilight of the Roman Empire. He himself had been trained with the best learning that Rome at that time had to offer. He himself actually came through the ranks and taught rhetoric in some of the best schools. And it was then, after he had come of age, that he converted to Christianity, but he wanted to continue the project of education, but this time for Christians. And so he had to confront the question, what does a Christian education look like when the unbelievers control the field? When they control the institutions, when the whole apparatus and curriculum of learning emerge from a pagan environment. And so Augustine wondered, what is it that Christians should jettison? What is it that Christians can embrace? What is it that Christians can adopt but in modified form? These are the questions that Augustine confronted when he sought to educate Christians in an environment when unbelievers dominated the field. A century later, we see a man in the south of Italy named Cassiodorus, who faced a very different educational landscape. He had to ask, what did a Christian education look like in an environment where unbelievers had abandoned the project of education altogether? The infrastructure of learning had entirely eroded. If education was to proceed at all, it had to proceed on the foundation of Christianity. The Christians had to be the ones preserving education. What does a Christian education look like when Christians are the ones forming the institutions, when Christians are the ones organizing the curriculum? Well, these two seasons in the history of education, the season of Augustine and the season of Cassiodorus, just 100 years apart, were very different moments in a crucial transformation that occurred in the history of the Western liberal arts. We're going to be studying this story. We're going to be going back to the sources. We're going to go back to Augustine. We're going to go back to Cassiodorus. We're going to ask ourselves which of their predicaments most resembles our own. Which can we learn from Augustine's period? What can we learn from Cassiodorus's period? As we confront these questions, we're going to engage these sources, and we invite you to join us here at New St. Andrews College.